Transition to organic certification is unlike anything I've done before. Think of it like a 36-month engagement to a wonderful fiancé. All right, so stick with me on this analogy. If you're a farmer, you're the one getting married. And if you're an advisor, imagine you're this wise friend and advice giver, just like you're going to be to your organic agronomy clients. So, your friend just told you that they have to get engaged for 36 months. What should they do at that time? They're eager to get hitched, darn it. Being the wise advisor that you are, you lay out two options for your friend. One, they can think about their engagement as just a substitution for their single life. Business as usual. Tying this to the farm, nothing really changes. They just stop using the prohibited inputs. Or two, they can think about the transition period, their engagement, as a time to really study their future spouse, the land, and prepare for their marriage or for becoming certified organic. You might ask your friend to think about this 36 months as the time to ask the really big questions, like, what makes you happy? Is the glass half full or half empty? Should the toilet paper roll over or under? The answer's over. Or, where is your dream vacation spot? By asking these questions and really thinking of this time as a period to research and prepare for marriage, you're likely going to be all the more successful. Engagement is also a kind of test run for marriage. Planning a wedding, maybe living together, working through a shared life are all good practice for the married life. Similarly, your friend could be asking their land, what weed problems do you have? How can I help you build up your soil fertility? How do you like to be tilled? What makes you the most sustainably productive field you can be? And in consideration of these answers, figure out how to spend those 36 months preparing for and practicing for the day the certificate arrives, aka the day you get married. And that's how we want to approach the concept of transition. It's a time where you figure out what a farm's fields need to be successfully certified organic, and then do your darndest to deliver that for them. If they need a big old boost in organic matter, we plant those cover crops. If they have a bad thistle problem, we grow some alfalfa. You don't cut corners and you only take on as much as you can handle. Getting this process right, asking those good questions, and taking the time to start implementing practices based on the answers will have a farmer heading into the big certification day with all the benefits of having done the homework well and with the confidence that this thing is gonna last. So transition, like engagement, can be a big, daunting task. And how do we deal with big, daunting tasks in this course? We break them down into little bite-sized to-do lists. So let's get started. Establish the why for why we want to go organic. Find an advisor or a mentor. Decide on transition pace. Run the numbers. Get soils up and running. Make time for a mental transition. Find a certifier and set up a good system. Explore the markets, and honestly grow a thick skin. So establishing that why. As any newly engaged person has probably asked, why am I getting married? The cost, the hassle, that darn drunk uncle. And here, I want to create a little bit of space to ask the same question. Why go organic? The answer, and the answer of any farmer or advisor looking at adding organics to their toolkit, is probably going to be pretty unique. But there might be some through lines. Top of mind is financial gain. Whenever demand outstrips supply, as it does in organics, growers and those who work with them are in a good financial position. But let's not pretend that farming is just the day you get a paycheck. It's also this lived, everyday human experience, and when that experience can be measurably more pleasant, folks should get interested. We covered common reasons that farmers transition to organic in another module. But let's give a quick rundown of some of those reasons from the average farmer's perspective. For example, growing your own fertility and using a free ecological crop protection strategy means you're not writing big checks to that input dealer. Organic means never wondering what effect spraying is having on you or your kids' health, because in organics, we're just not using those synthetic materials. And lastly, if you love rural America, like I do, Organics is the #1 way to revitalize our communities and our way of life. Study after study shows that counties with high concentrations of organic businesses have higher household income, reduced poverty, and more jobs on the farm. So, you could just stop at the thought of a bigger paycheck, but it's worth the time to sit for a minute. Consider all of these potential reasons. Write them down, pros, cons, and really decide if they are good enough to make you or your clients jump into the world of certified organic farming. Find an advisor. Now that's you. What I tell farmers is to find a mentor that they can be kind of on a texting basis with. Someone to whom it is just no big deal for that new organic person to call them up when they're looking at their field and they're realizing they have weeds in a critical stage, or they just can't seem to lock down a good seed bed with their tillage regime. Farming is always a challenge, but I tell you, it is so much easier with a buddy on the other end of the phone. If you're a consultant or advisor, that buddy can be you. You can be that boost of camaraderie, knowledge, and support that a transitioning farmer needs to get through to the other side. And I'd say that it would be smart to help your client find other mentors as well. A neighbor who's just gone organic, an elder in the community who has decades of experience relevant to organic. Tying a farmer into a community of resources is a resource unto itself. Decide on a transition pace. Don't underestimate the risk and challenge of transition. Lots of farmers have found success thinking about a 20% 5-year rule. That is, don't transition more than 20% of the farm per year. If things are going well, within 5 years, you'll have the whole place in organics. If you hit some snags, you haven't transitioned so much land that you can't slow down and recalibrate. It's also important to pick the right fields. Best candidates are fields with lower weed pressure, high fertility, good drainage, and that are a little closer to your home site. This makes scouting and the observations necessary and timing a lot easier. Once a farmer is more skilled in organics, then move on to those more challenging fields. Run those numbers. We have a whole lesson about finances through the transition process, so we won't spend a lot of time on that right now. Suffice it to say, get a handle on cash flow through transition and plan accordingly. Our biggest goal is to build and maintain healthy, fertile, productive soil for the long term. To do that in organics, we need to do a few things. First, we got to get our weeds under control while building soil fertility. Easiest way to do that is to raise forages. Perennial, ideally, but annual can be good too. You can do all that throughout the transition period, if it makes sense for the farmer and you got access to okay markets. Next, boost that soil fertility with either crop rotation, manure, or both. By making as many deposits as possible into your soil bank account every single year, you'll be living off the accumulating interest for years to come. Always start with a soil test. The majority of fertility in organic soils comes from the biology living off of the soil organic matter. It's a long-term investment that pays well if it's tended properly. Make some time for that mental transition. Let us not discount that everything anyone has learned about farming are lessons hard won. And everything a farmer knows about conventional farming is important. But we need to recognize that organic is just a different way of farming. A farmer needs to understand their motives, habits, priorities. If a farmer goes into transition assuming they can just substitute organic inputs for their conventional and call it good, they won't succeed in the long term. This can be a long process, and hungrily seeking out conferences, conversations, and resources will help get that mind transitioned before the land. Find that certifier and set up a good system. We talk about finding a certifier in the certification module, but the basics are to shop around and find one whose systems you like, is located in your area ideally, and is fairly priced. Next, establish an easy and manageable record-keeping system. Spending the time on this now will save you so much time and hassle later on. Templates and inspiration can be found in the lesson notes. Explore the markets. Transitional markets really aren't a thing, despite what you've heard. If a farmer is going to depend on a cash crop, non-GMO, or other IP options are the way to go. There are a lucky few who've stumbled onto some certified transitional contracts, but those are really not the norm. It can be a good idea to mention to a buyer that the grain you're raising is transitional. They may be willing to give you a slight premium, or probably not. Beyond transition, knowing what the organic market looks like is really worth that time investment. Call around. Let buyers know that you'll be, in a couple of years, certified organic. Get on their lists. Get a handle on pricing and contracts, and start to make the connections that will pay off once you're certified. Get those buyers lined up. You gotta thicken that skin. A farmer should prepare for everyone to be watching their every move during transition. All of the neighboring farms are going to be taking notes about how well it's going for you. And with great risk comes great reward. If those first few years go really well, not only will the neighbors take notice, but landowners will be beating down your door with rental opportunities. On the flip side though, if those first few years are just a weedy mess and you've overcommitted, everyone's going to assume that's what organic is, just a weedy mess and it just stinks. You have to have thick skin to overcome the social pressures from your neighbors and everyone in the community. Even if things don't go perfectly well, if the farmers and their advisors are constantly learning and positioning themselves for success, there's a sweet reward once you cross that finish line into certified organic status. So let's catch our breath a little bit. We're all here because we're interested in organics. But transition, kind of like wedding planning, is no cakewalk. Those who have fun during transition and ultimately make it to the other side are those who embraced that mindset shift, saw organic transition as a time to get to know their fields, invest in their soils and weed control, and worry a little bit less about maximizing revenue during the transition period. All the while, they're working steadily towards that sweet, sweet organic premium. And once that 36 months is up, Mazel Tov! See you in the next lesson.